welcome guys. I just wanted to do a quick video on how I build out my torpedo boats, or destroyers. So there's two different ways that I build them out basically. One is so the torpedoes can all fire in different directions, so they don't all fire at the same time. So in that case I'd have one at the front, two either side. The two either side will be behind a structure, so they can't shoot forward. So the one at the front can shoot forward, the two at the back can't shoot forward, one of them can only shoot left, the other one can only shoot right. So that's one of the designs. And then the other design is all of the torpedoes in the middle of the ship, so they can all fire the same direction. So the two times you would use that is if you want to just do one blanket fire and then escape. So that's a long range attack. You'd have them all in the middle, so you could fire them all off at the same time and then escape. If you were using a close-in ship where you're going to be staying around in the fight for a little bit longer, I usually use it for light cruisers later on in the game, and then so like when I get to about 1920, I only use the in the middle design most of the time with destroyers, and then I use the front, left and right design for the light cruisers from 1920 onwards, because destroyers don't last that long to be able to stick around to do a forward then left then right. But I'll quickly show you how I would build them. So I've just selected 1940 for now. So the first thing I'd do is put the bulkheads up, put the range down because you don't need it with a destroyer, put the displacement up just so you've got the max amount of space to put as many torpedoes on as you can, and obviously to get as much speed as you can. Okay, so the way that the speed works with destroyers, there's engine efficiency. You really don't need much acceleration because the boat is so light that it can just speed up really fast anyway, so engine efficiency is not a big issue, but you can just put it onto forced because it doesn't weigh or cost much, and then you only probably need the smallest funnel. So if you see here, it's on 100 engine efficiency, and then you can put it up to say 40 knots and you've still got above 30. So as long as you've got around 30, you're perfectly fine with a boat this light. So I always just go for the smallest one just to save on weight, because it really doesn't make much difference. So when I'm using torpedo boats or destroyers, I basically only use them for torpedoes. I don't use them for guns at all, because there's no point in using them in a gunfight when you can just use a light cruiser or a heavy cruiser, which does the job 100 times better. So there's no point in wasting your weight on guns. So I only ever just put the smallest gun on, just because it's a requirement basically. So because I'm not using it to shoot guns, it also means that I don't need accuracy. So I can take the smallest tower, the cheapest and lightest towers, because I don't need the accuracy. I can then put the smallest gun on. May as well put it on a tower if it can go on one, just to save some space. And then basically you don't really need much. You want maneuverability. Maneuverability is important, so you can put all the maneuverability things on, but I wouldn't go any higher than auxiliary 2. It just costs too much. So like if you go to auxiliary 3, that was like 2 and something million, or maybe just 2 million, but even then 2 million more, and then another one, that's another 2.5 million, so that's 4.5 million to go from AUX 2 to AUX 4. Just not worth it. AUX 2 is not much more than AUX 1, an AUX one is not much more than nothing. So going up to 2 is not that expensive, but going any higher than 2, it's just not worth it. So you can take more expensive engines to reduce your weight, but it's just not necessary. It puts the cost up again far too much. That's 8 million more to increase from geared 1 to geared 2, or double. And then if you're using things like turbo electric, just look at how much it goes up. That's another 11 million, was it? And then diesel's the same, 11 million, plus another 4 million. I mean gas, that's another 8 million. So you've gone from 51 million down to 19, almost 20. So yeah, just stick to the lowest engine. You don't need any more than that. And just have it on forced boilers. You don't need smoke interference because you're not using guns, so that's not important either. Same again with this. If it costs money, just don't bother with it. You don't need it. So I do go for the best armour because you're not going to be putting much armour on. So putting the best on is not going to cost an arm and a leg. So I go for these 4 because they're really important to stay alive. But then the other ones aren't important at all, really. So you can just ignore them. Same with the turret armour, it's not important. You can just leave it as it is if you want them. So you don't need a rangefinder because we're not shooting, but we do need acoustics. So that barely costs anything on these small ships. Acoustics barely costs anything. Now you can take a radar if you want, because it doesn't cost much, just so you can see where the enemy is. But it's not necessary if, you usually know where the enemies are. It's only on like Naval Academy missions where the enemy can get miles away from you and run away in different directions. So I'd only take that in Naval Academy. You don't really need it in campaign. So yeah, just acoustics in this section. So here you can just put these 2 to light and reduced because we're not using it for guns. With this, you just want the one that reduces your flash fire chance the most. So that's this one. Same again here. So that's this one. And then I don't see the point in putting protection modules on because it's not staying in the fight for very long, so you don't need to worry about it. So depending on what era you're in, you're going to use a different speed. Now 40 is a nice speed. I like to be at 40 in 1940, and then in 1930 maybe 37. So drop it down by 3 per decade. So in 1920 you'd be at 34, 1910 31, 1900 28, and 1890 25. That's what I'd recommend anyway. So 40 is 1940, you're at 40 every decade before, drop it down by 3. Okay, so we've got the speed and bulkheads. I always leave the crew at standard, just so you can take a few losses and it still lets you station the torpedoes basically. But it's not entirely necessary. If you want to drop it down, by all means you can. So yeah, that's everything on this side of the screen. We've got the towers, the funnel, we've got our customary gun on. So now the only thing left is torpedo launchers. So although these are way more expensive than putting 5 single torpedoes, the multiple deck torpedoes have a much better spread. So if you put 5 single deck on, they'll quite often all go in exactly the same line, which is pointless. They'll all hit the same part of the ship, or they'll all miss the ship entirely because they're all going in the same direction. Where if you put a quintuple deck on, they'll shoot in 5 different lines. You'll get a much better spread. So that is the reason why these are better than 5 of these. And obviously these are better than 4 of these. So multiple deck launchers are always better in terms of spread. So you're always going to want to take these regardless of the cost. So I do always put one at the front, just simply because I like the ability to be able to shoot forward if I need to or want to. And then with the ammo, the standard is not much more than the reduced. So it's 31 more weight and 500 more in the cost. But if you go increased, it puts it up by 60 and by 1.2, and you're only getting 1 extra round. So it's like 4 times, or is it 2 times? I can't remember now. So 30 and then 60, yeah. 500,000, 1.2. So it's about 2.2 times more expensive just to get that extra round in. And obviously if you're using torpedo tubes like these quintuple decks, the reload time on them is an absolute age. So the chances that you're going to stay alive long enough to see a 3rd round go off is incredibly unlikely. So you can either stick to standard, which is a good amount, or if you think that you're only going to do 1 torpedo run and then immediately escape, because these are so flimsy that they can very easily just get taken out of the fight immediately, you can just put them on reduced. So I like to leave them on standard just for the versatility, but by all means turn it down to reduced if you want. Okay, with the torpedoes, fast is great for close range. Electric and oxygen are great for long range. So if you're using a close range ship, you go for fast. If you're using a long range ship, you just go for oxygen if you've got it, or electric if you haven't. So the first one that I'll build out is the long range ship, so we'll go for oxygen. And then basically just put as many torpedo decks on as you can. So what I usually do is put these up to here and then move them when you start running out of weight, just to balance the ship. Okay, so you can start at the back just so you know that you've got the full I can't think of the word. You're using the most space that you can, basically. So this way you can see how many torpedo tubes you're going to be able to put on your ship. So it looks like we are practically full. We're not going to be able to fit any more on now. So we've obviously got an aft weight offset, so we can just start bringing these back. And then obviously we've got 5% over, so we can either just put the speed up so that covers the 5%, or we can just drop this. Now when you're dropping this, it sometimes changes the hull size like there, so just put it back up to when the hull size changes back, which is there, and then you can put the rest into speed. There we go. So this is the blanket fire style torpedo boat, and then the alternate style torpedo boat would be putting them all side by side instead. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So all of these would go side by side. So just check that they can actually shoot, because sometimes when you put them side by side, they can't shoot. Okay, so now we've got all of them side by side, and then we can move these side by side as well. Okay, there you go. Obviously you'd move these further back to get the offset down to 0, but I don't think there's any point in me showing you that. It's pretty obvious what you'd do there. So there you go, they're the two different designs. These can obviously all shoot sideways. These can shoot almost backwards. That one can shoot forwards. And then obviously these are sideways as well. So you'd get your forward shot off here. If you wanted, you could remove that. So you've got 2 forward shots. And then you put this final one at the back. Like that. And now this way you've got 1 that shoots backwards and 2 that shoot forwards now, instead of the other way round, which was 1 that shoots forwards and 2 that shoots backwards. So there you go, they're the 2 different torpedo designs. So I hope that was helpful, guys. Take care, and I'll see you soon.